Hi, I'm Bay Forrest with Focus Ministries, and today we're going to continue our Dunked On series and the third part of the life of David. You know, when I was playing for the Phoenix Suns, our second season, we were pretty excited. We were headed towards having a really good year, we were sure, and sure enough, we did have a good year. And I really was ready to prove to the coach just what I was capable of doing. So as we packed and got ready for training camp, which we had up in the mountains of Arizona in Prescott, and it was at a higher elevation, so we got in better shape, and it got us away from the distractions of Phoenix and all. And so as I was packing the night before, I had everything put together, and I was pretty excited about heading up there. And I looked at my feet and I thought, boy, that toenail's getting a little long. I think I better get that trimmed. And instead of getting toenail clippers and trimming it the way I should have, I thought, I'll just tear that thing back and get it to where it won't be too long and push up against the front of my shoe. And you know what happened. I tore it too far back, and especially on the side, but I thought, I'm sure it'll be all right. Headed to training camp the next day, and I noticed it was pretty sore the next day, even after just sleeping on it. And I went ahead and got to practice, and wouldn't you know it, the coach comes to me and he says, Bay, we're looking at starting you at power forward this year. I was so excited. And Alvin Adams and I were going to take that power forward and center position and go back and forth with that. And so I was ready to prove myself. And so we had really hard practices, 2-a-days, and we went at it pretty tough, and it was really hard on our feet as well. And I noticed after that first day of practice that my toe was really getting sore. But I was going to power through this thing and push the hardest I possibly could and show that coach I was ready. So the next day I went through 2 more of our practice sessions, and that night as I was trying to sleep, every time my foot touched the sheets, I was just in agony. I couldn't believe how hard or how bad it hurt. And the next morning I got up and I thought, I've got to check this. I've got to go talk to the trainer about this. I went in to see the trainer and I said, man, this is killing me, Joe. You got to do something with this. And he looked at it and started probing at it a little. And without getting too disgusting, as he probed on that thing and pulled back the side, some nasty yellow pus came out, and man, I knew I was in big trouble. And instead of staying and being able to work out with the team for the next few days, I was sent straight back to Phoenix to the podiatrist. And that podiatrist looked one time at my foot and he said, how did you let this get so bad? And I knew what I'd done. I tried to cover it up. First of all, I made a mistake and I didn't do things the way I knew I should have, but then I tried to cover it up instead of getting it taken care of right away. And don't you know that's exactly what happened to David when it tells us the story of David and Bathsheba. And we're not going to go into that whole story because it would take too long to do so, but you probably remember in 2 Samuel chapter 11 verse 1, it starts out and it says, in the days when kings went out to do battle with their army, it says David stayed behind. Now, I don't know why he did that. He was a warrior, and he was a great warrior. We've already looked at the story of Goliath and how all the women said, David has killed his tens of thousands, but Saul his thousands. And he was known as a great warrior, but he decided to stay home instead of being out with his men. And we know what happens with that. He's out there, he's back behind in his palace, and one night he goes up onto the palace roof, and apparently he was bored. And we know what happens with that. When you got idle time on your hands, what's the saying? Idle hands are the devil's workshop. Well, sure enough, he gets out on that rooftop and he's looking around and he sees this beautiful woman, Bathsheba, taking a bath. Instead of going, whoa, I don't want to be looking at that. Instead, he sends for her. He can have any single woman he wants in that land, and instead he sends for her, finds out that it's Uriah's wife. Bathsheba is married to Uriah, and Uriah is one of his top commanders, an amazing godly warrior that he has serving him. And instead of saying, well, I can't do that, he follows through with his lusts, with what he wants, and sure enough, they sleep together and she gets pregnant. Well, now he tries to bring Uriah back and have him come back and sleep with his wife and maybe get away with this. But Uriah is such a man of integrity. He says, how could I do that when all of my men are out fighting right now? I'm not going to go in and sleep with my wife. And so he sleeps out on the front doorstep. When David finds this out, he realizes he has to do something tries to get him drunk, and even that doesn't work. Well, then he sends him back and he tells Joab, his general, his head commander of all the armies, he says, put him out front in front of everybody else and then pull back all of the men. That was murder. And that's what ended up happening with David. I mean, not only was he an adulterer, but he was also a murderer. He was a liar. He was a manipulator. And in the long run, he ended up being a terrible father as well. All coming from a terrible choice that he made that he tried to cover up. And you know, that's what I want us to think about today. Instead of me just telling that entire story, I want to make sure we get through this without going through too much time with it. I want you to listen to what it tells us. Because it tells us that in Psalm 32, 3 and 4, David started feeling really guilty. Don't you? I know I do. When I've done something and I haven't made it right with God, the guilt starts creeping in. And that's what happened with David. And listen how descriptive this is. It says in Psalm 32, 3 and 4, when I kept silent, my bones wasted away through my groaning all day long. For day and night your hand was heavy upon me. My strength was sapped as in the heat of summer. Sounds like a miserable guy, doesn't he? And he was miserable because it was unconfessed sin that he hadn't made right with God. And that's when Nathan the prophet shows up. And sure enough, Nathan comes and he tells him this amazing story of this poor guy that has one little lamb that he just loves and treats it like his own child. And some bad guy, some bully that has tons of sheep comes and takes his sheep and slaughters it and eats it instead of eating one of his own. And David hears about this and he was so angry. He said, find out who that is, bring it to me, we're going to deal with this. I can't believe that happened. That man is going to pay. And that's when Nathan says, you are that man. Oh man, did it hit him. I'm thankful though, what a great lesson we learned, because instead of David trying to make excuses here, listen to his response. In 2 Samuel chapter 12, verse 13, then David said to Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. Did you catch that? He didn't beat around the bush and say, well, you know, hey, I'm king, and yeah, I kind of made a mistake, but he just said, I've sinned against the Lord. He didn't even say, I sinned against somebody else. He acknowledged the greatest sin was against God, who had put him in a position of authority, and he hadn't used it correctly. And that's what I want us to think about even today for each of us. You know, I'm not saying that you've done something bad like what David has. I don't know at all. And I won't even try to start listing all the possible sins we could get caught up in. I know one for me right now. I've really struggled with a judgmental attitude of people that I don't agree with on some of the things that are going on in politics and things happening around us, and even the COVID thing and all of that. But I need to be careful that I don't end up with a critical spirit that then gets infected and festers and then ends up becoming bigger and bigger, because we know what happens with that. And I'm not going to try to describe all of that. I just want to finish with this. I wrote in this book, my Dunked On book, I wrote, so what do we do when the infection of sin creeps in? It seems clear to me that the sooner we deal with it, the better off we'll be. When you sweep unconfessed sin under the rug of your life, all you get is a lump in the floor to trip you up. It never goes away. And it's more likely to grow until the little molehill becomes a mountain of festering stench and decay. Let's all follow David's example in Psalms 32:5. Then I acknowledged my sin to you and did not cover up my iniquity. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you forgave the guilt of my sin. I closed out this chapter with, now that's a clean sweep. And it is. It's a clean sweep when we do it God's way. He wants to clean up our lives. 1 John 1:9 says, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us of our sins and to cleanse us of all unrighteousness. Oh, it feels so good to be right with God. Whatever it might be in your life that's going on right now. Maybe it is a critical spirit. Maybe it's something that you've been involved in that you know is not pleasing to God. Things you've been looking at, things you've been thinking about, things you've been doing, whatever it might be. Whatever that is, oh, if God's speaking to you saying, clean that up, don't go there. listen to God and follow him in obedience, confess it knowing that he'll clean it up and make you right with him. That's where we want to be, completely, fully sold out and serving God, saying, I love you, God, and I want to do it your way.